kept you waiting, huh?
Welcome to Rookies and Codecs, a Resident Evil 9 podcast. I'm your host, Alex.
I'm Isaac.
Um, so we were just talking before we started recording about Resident Evil. You said that your wife is a huge fan, and I've been really enjoying Resident Evil 9. I've not finished it yet. I won't say where I'm at or what I'm doing to not spoil it for people that might be listening that also haven't finished it. But I think it's incredible so far.
Yeah, we had it pre-ordered, and I think we knocked it out over the weekend that it came out. Knocked out the main story.
Wow.
And oh yeah, we really booked through it. But like you said, my wife is a huge fan. I'm a huge fan. So we were really excited for it, especially when we found out that our boy Leon was coming back. Um, so we really, really enjoyed it.
I kind of wish that would have been a surprise for the game. Like, I know that because a lot of people were saying, well, maybe they wouldn't have sold as many copies. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like Resident Evil has proven that it can stand without, having the main characters that have been with the series. Like, I mean, 7 didn't advertise that Chris was going to be at the end. So it would have been a nice surprise to have Leon show up and be like, holy crap, we're getting to play as him. But on the other hand, it's like I stayed away from all the trailers except for the very first one that came out last year, and then the only other things I saw was some posters and stuff. But I've largely stayed away from the trailers and stuff, and I think that's really helped make the game a surprise for me.
Yeah, honestly, I'm kind of surprised because I watched the initial trailer and then I watched the one where they actually revealed Leon, and I don't feel like, at least out of those two, much got spoiled for the actual game for me. So that was a pleasant surprise on my part. Because let me tell you, there are some twists and turns that I wasn't expecting. I was very happy with it overall, though. It's probably my favorite out of the new. I don't know if you consider it the new series, but like 7 on, it's my favorite of that kind of trilogy.
Yeah, because that was the first one that sort of started with the first person, and I like that this one you can kind of choose between the two. I don't know about you, but I went with third person for both because it just feels kind of natural. I mean, I would have loved to have like the over the head camera like from the classic ones as an option too, personally. Like, I think that would have been really cool.
Yeah, I went with the default. So it's defaults to first person for Grace, third person for Leon, and that's just what I stuck with as we played through. Actually, the way we did it, so I played through Grace's part because I enjoy the survival horror puzzly aspect more, and then my wife played through Leon's parts of the story. So it was kind of pass the controller back and forth. We had
That's
a lot of
cool.
fun with it like that.
What difficulty did you guys play it on?
Uh, Standard, modern, whatever.
Okay.
The one, the hardest one that doesn't have ink ribbons.
Yeah, so I'm playing on that one. I'm playing on the hardest one, which might be why it's taken me longer. That night, I'm just playing so many games at this time. Um,
Yeah.
but I've been really I like to take my time with these survival horror games and just really like look at the environments and stuff. To like just really admire the storytelling that goes on with like the little details. Um, and I think I think that was one of my many problems with 6 is just like that sort of thing was missing, and I'm glad that with this one, I'm not dreading playing Leon at all because the combat still feels intense, and scary in its own right because he doesn't feel invincible. He feels um, more vulnerable like he is in the 4 remake, rather
Yeah.
than him and Chris and Jill and Claire being basically superheroes. So I like that they're doing that with these classic characters.
I don't know if you've seen the meme where it's like, both campaigns are a horror experience. As Grace, you're afraid of the zombies, and as Leon, it's just a horror game for the zombies.
True. Um, and speaking of Leon, I just bought Resident Evil 4 for the Wii, and I played that for a little bit last night. As I've played Resident Evil 4 on my Switch and my Xbox, and I've always wanted to play it on the Wii because it's got the motion controls.
Yeah,
So that was a lot of fun. I can't wait to play through the whole thing at some point.
yeah. I so 4, I know it's like one of the most beloved of the Resident Evil games. I've only played through it once, and that was on like the PS4 re-release. So I don't have as strong a connection to 4, I guess, as most people do. That's why I've got the remake of 4. I've just never have booted it up.
It's really good.
Um,
I think in every way it's
th-
superior. Like I know that's kind of sacrilege, but the the characters are better realized. It's scarier. Um, I think the biggest improvement was Ashley. She's not annoying in the remake. She has more to. I don't know. She's not nearly as helpless. Like she can actually. Not that she's like a fighter by any means still, but it doesn't feel. She
you
doesn't feel like dead weight.
you can step away from her for more than 2 seconds.
Right, and it's like in the
Yeah,
cutscenes, she feels like an actual character and not just a damsel.
right. Well, that's a plus.
So I would. Uh, the voice actor that plays Leon in 9 is the same that plays him in the remake of 2 and 4, which I was surprised by. I kind of figured they'd just bring back Matt Mercer because he kind of plays him in the main series from 6 on. But this guy's always been pretty good so far.
Okay. I actually didn't know that Matt Mercer had played Leon. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he plays
Um,
Leon in 6 and then in a lot of the animated movies.
okay. I need to check those out too. I've got I think Degeneration and Damnation. I've got those and still need to watch them. I think they're still in their plastic.
Oh,
It's a
wow.
pretty recent it's a pretty recent find for me. Um, but speaking of survival horror games, and I promise we'll get to Metal Gear eventually. Um, so I have never played any of the Silent Hill games aside from PT until I think this past week is when I started playing the Silent Hill 2 remake. And you're talking about the environmental storytelling from Resident Evil 9 being really good. This is just off the charts. I am loving my time with Silent Hill 2. So I know you're a Silent Hill 2 fan,
Yes.
or a Silent Hill fan in general. Um, so I've been loving it, and I've been interested in getting into the series a
It,
little bit more
it's
once
a
I
tricky
finish it.
series to get into because a lot of the games aren't available on modern consoles, and they're kind of hard to track down. And not only that, they're expensive. Um, but um, yeah, I think that the two most recent games, Silent Hill F and the remake of 2, are both really good, like return to form for the series.
I had a friend recommend the short message, I think.
That one's okay
Or
for like, I mean, it's a free game, so it's hard to like, you know, be picky about it.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean that one's okay for what it is. I mean, it's a good like short 2 to 4 hour experience, I think. Um, but
That's not bad.
Yeah. Uh, but well, what else have you been playing? Anything else?
Yeah, I actually, a couple of days ago, I got Pokopia, the new Pokemon game. Um, and I'm not a big like Animal Crossing person, but man, Pokopia has got me good. Um, I just so have you seen much about Pokopia? Are you a big Pokemon guy? Anything like that?
I haven't been into Pokemon since I was a kid, and we're talking like elementary school.
Hmm.
I'm into it like I passively through my fiance and then her kids. But I enjoy them in Super Smash Brothers and stuff. But I don't like seek out Pokemon stuff necessarily.
Okay, that's what I. So whenever I was in school, I got Pokemon Black and Pokemon Platinum, and those were the only Pokemon games I had played until I want to say 2 years ago. I got Pokemon Violet, and I've been slowly kind of reintegrating in. My son, he loves Pokemon. I mean, he can probably tell me the full original 151. So he is like really into it. And so kind of through him or with him, I've been getting back into it myself. I got the Leaf Green and Fire Red re-release, and getting into Pokopia. It's really cool because I don't know if you played the Mystery Dungeon games back in the day, um, but this one has something kind of similar where you can actually speak to the Pokemon and their personalities really shine through. They all have unique interests, and you can kind of like they'll all have requests that you can do to kind of take care of them. Make them new houses, um, move them into places with their friends, that sort of stuff. So it really like kind of drives home the you are friends with Pokemon thing more than the main series ever did for me. It was more like, they're your pets in the main series, but
Yeah,
it really feels like you're building relationships with each of the Pokemon in this. So it's really cool from that standpoint for me.
interesting. Um, yeah, I can't say that I've ever really played any of the Pokemon video games, but at least not like to any like significant length. But I enjoy watching my fiance play them because she gets a kick out of them.
Well, if you're ever interested, uh, Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness just got added to the GameCube Classics on Switch Online. So that's a really good like proper RPG. Um, so it's more in line with like the classic franchise, almost closer to Final Fantasy than anything else, in my opinion. So
Right, because of the turn-based
it's actually
stuff.
really yeah it's but it
So I have a what I'm going to call a book jacket version of this story because this story is deep and it has a lot of moving pieces. And I was also thinking that parts of gameplay has to inevitably merge into this because the game is kind of broken up into sections through boss fights. At least that was kind of my opinion. So I was thinking while we
yeah.
move through the story, we'll take small detours to talk about each boss and their mechanics and maybe a little bit of their backstory and what we thought of them.
All right, sounds good to me.
So Metal Gear Solid takes place in 2005, so 21 years ago. Renegade genetically enhanced Special Forces unit Foxhound seizes control of a remote island in Alaska, codenamed Shadow Moses, which houses a nuclear weapons disposal facility. Foxhound threatens to use this nuclear capable mecha, Metal Gear Rex, which has been secretly tested at this facility against the U.S. government. Their demands: they want the remains of Big Boss and a ransom of $1 billion within 24 hours. So who do they call in to get this taken care of? They call in Solid Snake, who is forced out of retirement by Colonel Roy Campbell to infiltrate the island and neutralize the threat. So the game has this sort of extra thing that you can watch to give like extra cutscenes, and I really like these cutscenes because they kind of almost look like a comic book. That gives a lot of, I guess, extra background and some stuff that also went on in Metal Gear 1 and 2. And you also kind of get to meet the other characters that are going to be helping Snake out. Do you usually watch the extra cutscene before playing this game, or do you just jump right into it?
Um, so you're talking about the one that comes on whenever you first boot the game up?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that
No,
one.
I'm not gonna lie, I sit through that almost every time I turn the game on, and it's mostly for that little melody, the dun 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 dun. Like I don't know why, but it just scratches an itch in my brain. So I let it play at least 30 seconds into it every time I turn it on.
Yeah, so basically they're giving him like the laydown of what the mission's going to be, and then there's a doctor that gives him a mysterious shot. Um, Snake's basically like, well, what's in that thing? And she's like, oh, well, it'll help keep you from freezing to death while you're shot out in the ocean. And basically, at the beginning of the game, proper, they shoot Snake through a torpedo, and he swims to the facility. And this is when I first played this game years ago, to like try to play it, as I always died before I could get to the elevator. And I think it's because I was super impatient. But this time around, I made it, and eventually Snake enters the facility via a air vent, and he locates the first hostage, the DARPA chief Donald Anderson. So Mr. Anderson reveals that Metal Gear Rex can be activated with a secret detonation code override. But what happens after he reveals this to Snake? He dies of a heart attack.
Immediately.
Yeah, it's quite gruesome. And little does Snake know, there's somebody else in one of the neighboring cells, and this happens to be Meryl Silverberg. Am I pronouncing that right? Meryl
Um,
Silverberg.
I'll be I'll be honest with you, I didn't know she had a last name until you just said it.
And it turns out that this is Colonel Campbell's niece, and she's
Yep.
being held hostage because she was basically sent there to, for various reasons, including some of the to help get this mission done and over with. But she helps Snake escape. But while this is happening, she she basically learns the hard way that she's too green for this mission, because she freezes up right while these guards are coming in, and because Snake's like, shoot him, and she hesitates big time.
Yeah.
And there's another hostage that Snake ends up locating, and it's Arms Tech President Kenneth Baker. But there's a huge obstacle in the way. There is our first boss of the game, Revolver Ocelot, which is this gunfighter that has this sweet mullet, and who can like bounce bullets off of the walls, and he talks a lot about how he that the bullets go where he wants, and I don't know, that they're basically an extension of himself. So this is our first boss fight in the game, right? So I think that once you get to this point and once you start fighting him, if you're not on board, then this game isn't for you. So, what do you think of the very first boss fight in Metal Gear Solid?
It's a fun little game of tag. Um, I was a little annoyed the first time I ever played it. A little annoyed because it felt like whenever you started to get onto him, he'd just run off real quick,
Yes.
and it took me a little while to actually get the hang of it. But no, I really I really love Revolver Ocelot. I thought this was a great introduction to the character.
Yes.
Um, and I did have just a couple quick things about the early game as well. Um, so this is actually not the first member of Foxhound that we encounter. Um, so I don't know if you have it in your notes. I don't. I know it's not like explicitly stated, but in the manual for the game, it goes through all the members of Foxhound, and there's an additional member um, that we don't actually fight. That's in the manual.
Right.
Decoy Octopus.
Yeah, I didn't forget about him. I figured we would talk about
Okay.
him a little bit later once he is kind of revealed.
All
Uh,
right. I'll put a pin in that one, and I'll circle back to that later. The other thing that I wanted to mention, did you ever? You may have been too old for it. Did you ever watch Ben 10?
I never watched it, but I'm familiar with it.
So the guy that plays uh, Colonel Campbell is the same voice actor that plays Grandpa Max
Oh,
from Ben
interesting.
10. So for anyone else that's like mid 20s, grew up with that show, that is like to this day, whenever I play the Metal Gear Solid games, all I hear is Grandpa Max talking to me through the codec. So I just thought that was hilarious and wanted to point that out before we got too far away from it where I forgot. Um, but yeah, no, Revolver Ocelot, honestly, is probably my favorite um, character in the series. Um, so I don't know, he's just got that cool old guy
Yeah, yeah.
energy to him. Like, I've been around since the dawn of time. I can, shoot you under the table.
And it's like while
Um,
he's clearly a cowboy because while you're fighting him, you can hear the spurs as he's running away, um,
oh
which
yeah,
is hilarious.
I don't know why he is like so inspired by the cowboy aesthetic that he like carries around a six shooter and he's got the the spurs and the jacket and everything.
Yeah, the
But
duster.
I just love everything that he's about.
Um,
And that's one thing that how far are you in Metal Gear Solid 2 before we get too far?
about 2 hours. So I just finished.
Okay.
Not to spoil it for anybody else, but yeah, just about 2 hours.
So it's a constant um, you know, well, I wouldn't say constant. It's a reoccurring thing with Ocelot, and he's just cool every time he's there.
Yeah, he's as far as like a character, he's probably my favorite boss. I don't. I mulled over who, and we'll get to the other bosses as well as we go through the story. But I mean, basically, when you fight him, it's like a cat and mouse thing, and you got to time it just right. But you have to be careful because Kenneth Baker is tied up in the middle, and if you cross one of the wires, it blows up. Or I even thought I could be clever and use a grenade. I was like, well, it seems like we're far enough away, but if you use a grenade, it's gonna blow him up too.
I I did the same thing whenever I first played it. I was sick of chasing him around, and so I just chucked a grenade and it was over. But the really cool thing too, speaking of the cowboy thing, it really feels like you're in like a quick draw duel with him whenever you're
Right.
running back and forth. So I mean, there was a lot of love and care put into this, and you can see it.
Um, but once the boss fight is over, uh, they're his and Snake's gunfight are interrupted by a mysterious cyborg ninja who does the worst thing you could probably do to Ocelot, I would imagine, and cut off his right hand, his shooting hand. Um, and after this happens, Ocelot runs away, and then this ninja kind of spazzes out a little bit. um, and Baker briefs Snake on the Metal Gear Pod project and advises him to contact Meryl, whom he gave the PAL card to that might prevent the launch. Um, in fact, he says that I think it's him that first says that Meryl's codec code is on the back of the CD case. Is that correct? I know Campbell says it too, but I believe Kenneth Baker is the first one to say it.
Yeah, I know it's early on.
Um, and so it's like if you played the PS1 original, you would flip over your CD case and Meryl's code would be on the back, and it's the same with the Master Collection. Like I have it for the Switch, and when you flip it over, the code's there, and I'm glad that they remembered to include that. Otherwise, I mean, I guess you could Google it. Um, it's the kind of fourth wall thing that I really love about this game. But after he breaks the fourth wall, he too dies of a sudden heart attack, and it's really dramatic. He's like, "Oh, you those bastards! They actually did it." So after he dies, Snake calls Meryl on Codec, and they agree to meet in the warhead disposal area on the condition that Snake contacts Metal Gear's designer, Dr. Hal Emmerich. So Snake, while en route to sort of rescue Mr. Emmerich, receives a anonymous codec call from somebody calling themselves Deep Throat, warning them of a tank ambush. So you basically go outside, going from one building to another, and there's this tank that is piloted by another boss called Vulcan Raven. Um, so this boss fight's pretty straightforward. You have to basically kind of dodge around the tank and get to a point to where you can throw grenades or other stuff inside of it. To me, this boss fight was pretty straightforward and much easier than the tank boss fights in the previous two games. What did you think?
I honestly, I know it's technically a boss fight because of who's piloting the tank, but I personally don't really consider it to be a boss fight. Just more of a difficult, like a slightly more difficult encounter. Um, A, because, we do get the rematch with Vulcan Raven later, and B, because I just feel like, the challenge is more in getting up close. Once you get up to the tank, I mean, you can take care of business. But it's getting there, not getting blown up by the mines, not getting shot out of the ground. So it's more of a puzzle than a boss fight in my
Right.
mind.
That's true. However, this boss fight does sort of fix a problem I had with the other two games. That there are multiple different grenades you could use that are useful against the tank. It's not like there's a specific
Yeah.
grenade or whatever that you have to have. And there's a lot of boss fights in this game where that you can use different weapons. You don't have to use just a specific one. And I was like, okay, that's the Kojima definitely improved as far as like the tomfoolery with like having the specific weapons. But yeah, I agree that it's kind of a nothing burger of a boss fight. Like once you get it over, it's over quite quickly. But once you go into the building and you find Emmerich, the cyborg ninja reappears, and this is somebody that we know, Isaac. this is a reason that I'm glad we played the other two games because it's revealed that this is Gray Fox, um, which was a twist I did not see coming somehow. um,
Let me tell you, whenever I played this for the first time, I was like, "What the heck? Who is this? What is he talking about? Zanzibar? What?" And having the full context makes this hit so much harder, especially with the whole thing with his fiance and everything in Metal Gear 2. So, kind of seeing that come full circle here through the story of Metal Gear Solid makes it hit so much harder than it did just coming in and knowing him as the cyborg ninja.
right. So I think that it makes the other two games uh, worth playing, especially if you're gonna. It was worth it for just for the Gray Fox stuff in this game. It was worth it to play the other two games, despite the headaches and issues I have with them. Um, but basically, you this is another sort of run around and fight them. But the trick with Gray Fox is to not use your pistol. Uh, it's better to fight him hand to hand because eventually he puts away his sword because he'll be like, oh, it's we got to have an honorable fight. Um, what did you think of this boss fight overall?
I was, when the first time playing through the game, I was just felt like they put a blindfold over me, spun me around 3 times, and said, "All right, go kill it." Because he can, turn invisible and he'll just pop up on you, slice you up, and go. So it took a lot of like trying to. This is kind of a constant thing through the game, but it takes a lot of trial and error, figuring out what works, what doesn't. Um, but the fact that he's, towards the end is like shorting out and trying to like stay on the battlefield, make it a fair fight with you, but not backing down whenever you can clearly see that he's just in pure agony. It it kind of made it heart wrenching, even not knowing the full extent of the history between him and Snake. There's something there,
Right.
and Kojima does a really good job of like conveying that not only through the cutscenes but also through the gameplay.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if maybe because I had the HD filter on, if you will, and that made it. I think it made it easier to see him when he's cloaked,
Mhm.
because you could see. It was sort of like the Predator, where it's not like a true cloak, where it sort of matches the background. Um, so I think that might have made the fight against him a little bit easier than what it would have been if you'd have played the PS1 original on a CRT. He might have been a lot hard to see with the naked eye. Um, because it's like
All
there's a
right, with
lot.
with a CRT, I can only imagine.
Yeah, because there's a lot of times I was like, oh, he's right there. I can see him because you could see him move. Um, it's only when he stands still that he's pretty much invisible. Um, but yeah, you basically the key is to fight him hand to hand, and this one I think was the boss fight that took me the most tries. But the thing was with these boss fights, and in this one in particular, is I never got frustrated because it's like I got closer each time. Um, like once I figured out like what their uh, I guess move set was, if you will. Um, but basically, after you beat him, you talk to Hal Emmerich, who tells you to call him Otacon, and um, Otacon is basically short for Otaku Convention, and an otaku is basically a loner that likes anime. Am I, uh, summarizing that correctly?
That's what he said, and let me just tell you, growing up, I always heard about Otacon, and I was like, that's such a cool name. But to hear him explain it, I'm like, that is such a dumb name.
And it's like I love this first interaction between him and Snake because they're two like polar opposite people, but their chemistry is so good. Um,
Li- Literally peeing his pants, the first time you see him,
right,
versus the hardened soldier, not afraid of anything. Just fought what should be scientifically impossible as far as he knows, and then you got Otacon in the locker hiding, peeing himself.
right. So him and Snake talk, and um, Snake basically tells Otacon what the true intentions behind Rex is. So of course he's devastated because he didn't want it to be used for war. Um, so he agrees to help Snake, and I love during this conversation. It's like kind of near the end of it. There's an awkward pause, and Snake's like, "Are you feeling okay?" And Otacon's like, "Yeah. Why are you looking at me like that?" Because everybody else that Snake has talked to, with the exception of Meryl, has just died of a sudden heart attack. Um, Again, really funny. Um, so they split up, and Otacon kind of stays hidden using the same technology that Gray Fox was using to stay invisible. Um, so he meets up with Meryl, um, and it's very important that the way that you find Meryl. Uh, how do we how do we find Meryl, Isaac? Like, I want to hear somebody else
The
say it.
Well, you see, um, no, you can tell that Kojima likes women quite a bit, because whenever Solid Snake glances by, like as Meryl is walking, he can see from the swing of her hips that's clearly a woman. So he
Yep.
follows her into the restroom and confronts her in there.
Right.
Mind
And
you, the same way he found Gray Fox's fiance in Metal Gear 2.
right. So it's like, yeah, you're sneaking through parts of the facility, and you're looking at all these guards, and I'm like looking at them, and I'm like, wait, there's one that's like clearly smaller than the others, and I'm like, is that Meryl? And um, you, you could tell that she definitely walks differently, which both him and Otacon comment on. And I'm like, is there a women's bathroom I gotta follow her into or something? And that ends up being the case. You have to wait by the women's bathroom and follow her in. And you have this conversation with her where she's talking about the reason she um, became a soldier was to be closer to her father. Um, and correct me if I'm wrong on some of this, but it was she didn't. Did she know her father, or did her father just die when um, she was very young? Is that what it was?
I believe her father died when she was young. I think Campbell expands on that a little bit
Right.
later on, like
Right.
after you talk to Meryl.
Yep.
If I'm remembering right, that's what it was.
Yeah. So she's basically talking about how she's more comfortable with a gun rather than a bra, and says a lot of other cliched stuff like that. But it's a really this was another one of those cutscenes where I was like, this feels like the way that the camera moves and stuff around the characters. It's very cinematic, and I was very impressed by that because really the only other games that did stuff like that were Square Enix games, like the really top notch ones like Final Fantasy and Vagrant Story. Um, so I love this scene in the bathroom with Meryl. Um, but after you get done talking to her and having this heart to heart, you go further into the underground base, and she starts acting kind of funny. Um, and I noticed that when she was talking, it sounded like she was wearing a mask, and I'm like, that's weird. But once you go into like one of the further rooms, she starts kind of like acting like a zombie and saying some crazy stuff at Snake, and this is where the legendary Psycho Mantis appears, and you basically have this boss fight where you have to fight Meryl without killing her. So you punch her out, and then you have this fight with Psycho Mantis, and I know that you love this boss fight, so I'm going to let you break this one down.
Yeah. So, whenever you go in, he, talks about how, he can see how much you saved the game, and he can read your mind. He knows what you're going to do before you do. And actually, if I know in the original like PS1 release, if you had a save file from other Konami games like Castlevania, he'd be like, "Oh, I see you're a Castlevania fan." Uh, just little stuff like that.
Are you serious?
And yeah, yeah, there's it's like two or three games that he'll call out by name that
Okay.
Konami developed. Um, but I can't remember the others off the top of my head. But just to kind of show you, how he knows everything about you and you know nothing about him. So
Right.
when you get into the boss fight, it's you know you might be able to get one shot off for every like 20 that you try. He seems like he is always one step ahead of you until you realize that you have to change the controller from player one to the player two port. Or in the master collection, you got to go into the menu with like the manual and everything, and there's a setting in there to change it. And once you do that, he can't read, your mind anymore, and he's more or less a pushover. Um, but no, this boss fight just enamored, like, I love it so much because there are points whenever he'll like switch the screen to black, and the old TVs would say like the video for the video input in the top, it says Hideo. Um, little touches like that that just really show the character of this boss, that he just loves toying with people, like like a predator or something, toying with their meal before they eat it. Um, yeah, what were your thoughts on Psycho Mantis?
Um, so it took me a while to figure it out. Because it's like you can still damage him before switching out controllers, and uh, I'm like, clearly there's something else you got to do. And so, I'm thinking about the conversation I had with him, and I thought, well, my first thing to try was maybe this is a boss fight I can't win, so I let him kill me, and that didn't work. Um, I also tried. Uh, I think once I started thinking about like, well, he says something about moving my controller, which he couldn't do because my controller that I was using at the time didn't have the rumble feature. Um, so I was I was just thinking, I was like, wait a minute, do I have to switch ports? Like, is this the craziest thing ever? So I pulled out the cord because I had a cord to control, and I just switched it to the other port, and that just closed the game. uh, until it was basically just told me my controller was disconnected, and I was like, okay. And I'm like, well, maybe there's something in the menu, like the master collection menu. And sure enough, I saw there's like a selection where you can pick controller player one or two, and I'm like, this seems weird because this isn't a two-player game. So I swapped it to two, and you're right. Once you do that, um, you're basically able to beat him pretty easily. Um,
Yeah, it
so
seems like without his little crystal ball, he's pretty much nothing.
so I'm assuming if you were to play this on the PS1 or two, you'd take the corded controller out and put it in the secondary port. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, you'd physically, and even on the Twin Snakes on the GameCube, you would physically take it out of the player one slot and put it into the player two slot.
Okay. Wow, that's just like a creative thing. Like, I can't think of any other game that's done something like that. And
Yeah,
even more incredible that the PS1 could do it.
that that's one thing that you see consistently throughout the games is Kojima's just he's known for having the wacky stories and everything, but he's got truly you know, innovative ideas that in a lot of cases have pushed gaming as a whole forward that he introduced in his games that like you see other franchises, other developers take from little by little. That now stuff like this, I guess trying to trick the player. I would love to see more stuff like that. Um, yeah, that's one reason I love Psycho Mantis so much. Is it's just it almost feels like he's just trying to manipulate you into him winning versus overpowering you
Right.
like
Um,
like all the other bosses.
right, exactly. And once you do defeat him, he tells you about his tragic backstory as he's dying, and uh, as you look into like his Frankenstein face, he basically, to summarize, he basically just tells you about how he could read people's minds and that his parents were terrified of him, and this kind of led him to burning down his village. And while he's looking into Snake's mind, he kind of sees that Snake has also done terrible things, and but he sees that there's a soft spot in Snake's heart for Meryl. And before he dies, he basically tells Snake where he needs to go next, and kind of comments that it was nice for him to use his powers to help somebody for a change. Um, so didn't have feeling. I didn't feel too sorry for him, but I felt a little sorry for him near the end. I didn't have that on my bingo card, but so basically, after you defeat Psycho Mantis, you go to this underground passageway, and this part made my jaw drop because what happens is the shot rings out, and Meryl gets messed up by a sniper, and um, she's basically left there bleeding to death, and the sniper, named Sniper Wolf, is basically waiting for you to go out and rescue her, and you can't get to Meryl without getting shot. I tried that because I was like, there's no way I can go back in time to get this sniper that I need to fight her with. There has to be another way, but that was an incorrect assumption. You basically have to go back through the facility to find this sniper rifle. Um, this was this was an intense part of the game, um, and
All right, but between Meryl laying on the floor bleeding out, those wolves in the cave, I was like chewing on my nails during this section of the game.
right, and so I was like, is there a timer on the game? Like, uh, what if I take too long? Is it just going to be a game over all of a sudden? But I never got anything like that. But eventually, you come out, and once you get the sniper, you come back, and Meryl's gone, but you can fight Sniper Wolf by doing the sniper section, and it really helps to have these pills. I forget what they're called, but they're these pills you can take to steady your aim. Um, and I thought I would hate this section, to be totally honest, but there was a while where I debated that the Sniper Wolf fights were some of my favorite. What do you think of the sniping sections in this game?
So in like any sort of I don't know if you call it class-based game, anything like that, where you can be a sniper, I am always a sniper. I mean, going back to like playing Team Fortress 2 in elementary school. So I really it was a pleasant surprise for me to see this little sniper duel in here. I had a really hard time with it the first time around until I found out about those pills because I took to Google. I was like, there's no way that this is just this hard. And I found out about the pills and went and got those and had a much easier time with it.
Right,
Um, but it was I just really enjoy like the sit and wait, follow her through your scope and you ducking back behind the wall at the right time. Um, it's just I don't know. There's something about sniper gameplay um, that just really, you know, gets my heart racing anyways. You know,
Right.
I play like the Sniper Elite games and I'm really into it. But so I really, really enjoyed this fight. More so on repeat playthroughs than I think the first time. Um, but yeah, it was really really cool to see and hear for me.
Yeah. Yeah, usually I'm pretty bad at sniper parts. Like Halo, so I'm terrible with the sniper, but I did pretty okay with this fight. In fact, I think I might have gotten Sniper Wolf on my first try, if I remember correctly. Um, but
Better than me then.
it's just, well, I think it helped that I had the pills, and I took those immediately. So once I figured out the trick, it made it much easier. Um, but basically, once you beat her, Snake kind of rushes over because he wants to find out what happened to Meryl, and he's ambushed by Sniper Wolf and some of her men, and is basically captured. And she makes comments about how Snake is her new prey, and she's obsessed with him now. And of course, she's got this epic cleavage. Um, but Snake basically wakes up in this, I guess, an infirmary, uh, and he wakes up to Sniper Wolf, Ocelot, and Liquid Snake, um, basically getting ready to torture him. And is it here where Liquid confirms that him and Solid are twin brothers?
Ah,
Like
maybe.
I'm pretty
I
sure.
Yeah, I can't remember right off. I know most of that comes later on,
Right.
like at whenever you actually talk to Liquid. I can't remember if he mentions it here or not. Now that you're asking me.
I believe so. So basically, this one of the hardest parts of the game for me because I have nerve damage in my hands, so the clicking the button real fast was really difficult. Uh, so Ocelot basically begins to torture you, and again he'll break the fourth wall. He'll be like, if you use a turbo controller, I'll know about it. Um, but there's also an option to basically wuss out. Um, but I didn't do this, but I assume that he kills Meryl if you wuss out. Um, so I don't know what you did to get past this, but what I did was I took off my engagement ring and I put it between my two fingers and just pressed on that as hard as I could, and that's what got me through being tortured by him multiple times.
Um, so I don't know if you play Mortal Kombat much.
I've played Mortal Kombat 10 and 11.
Okay, so there was a Test Your Might mini game in Mortal Kombat X,
Yes.
and it was basically this. So I had some practice from that in high school. I was big into Mortal Kombat. It's a little embarrassing how much time I spent on that game. So I had some tricks from that I used on this, and I don't know if well obviously you didn't. Um, so if you do fail this, they actually go through with it, and they really do kill Meryl, and it does change the ending of the game that you get, like the final cutscene.
Right.
Um,
But if you get tortured too much, you Snake dies and the game is quote unquote over and it takes you back to the start screen. And I when that first happened, I
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
what am I going to do if the game like deleted my save? Because I was thinking, is Kojima crazy enough to do something like that? And
Oh, can you
thankfully,
imagine permadeath in Metal Gear Solid?
uh, I I can only imagine. I mean, my suspicion is maybe he had that idea early on and he was like, nah, I cannot do
They
that.
had to have they had to have talked about it at least.
It's like, can you imagine how many calls Konami would have gotten? Um, so basically, the first time you get tortured after you survive, you are thrown into a cell and you find Anderson's body in the cell with you, who's been apparently dead for days. He's got maggots and stuff on him, which makes no sense because he's only been dead for a couple of hours, probably, right? So Snake makes a comment on that. Um, so he basically calls Otacon to come and get him, um, and you get tortured again. And after the second time, for me, I think it took me 4 or 5 tries to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do. But there's a guard there that has the run, so he has to leave the room multiple times. And during one of those times, Otacon will show up and give you food and ketchup. So what you're supposed to do is put ketchup on you like you're bleeding to death and lay in the middle of the floor. But it took me forever to figure out how to equip the ketchup because there's like a particular way you've got to do it. Um,
Yeah.
and apparently you can also hide under the bed, and if when the guard comes back and sees that you're not in there, he'll rush in there. But either way, you can do either the ketchup method or hide under the bed. Which one did you do?
I did the ketchup. So that's another thing that I ended up having to break down and look up because I just kept going back to the torture room and kept going back to the cell, and I was like, what on earth? Like, how many times do I have to go through this? So I did eventually, the first time around, break down and Google it, and I ended up going with the ketchup just splayed out in the middle of the prison floor. Um, and it was I thought that would be the funnier option of the two, and
Definitely.
I was right. I was right.
Um, so like once you do that, Otacon helps you escape, and you make your way up to the communications tower. And this is when you fight a helicopter that is um, piloted by Liquid. And this is so I guess this is another vehicle fight, right? Like we had helicopter fights in the first two games. Is this one that you would consider a boss fight, or is this a puzzle like with Vulcan Raven in the tank?
Now, I would consider this more of a boss fight because there's actual there's a lot of back and forth. This is actually one of the most memorable parts of the game for me personally because running around on that rooftop trying to get a good vantage point, just holding it long enough for the missile to lock on and get to the hind D, it was one of the most exciting parts of the game for me.
Right, but it's pretty simple
It
though.
felt like it is when you
And I'm
break
not
down
saying
what
that
you're
it's a knock.
doing.
Like
It
sometimes
felt
it's
like they
okay to
were,
be simple.
yeah. I mean, all it is point and shoot whenever you have a chance. But it felt like there were real stakes to the fight. Like you've got, um, excuse me, you got like the tower, like whatever the radio tower. It falls down at one point from the missile from the hind D, and you feel like you're in real peril up
Right.
there.
I mean, it's a freaking helicopter, and I didn't mention this, but he used this helicopter to take down two F-16s earlier in the game. So clearly, Liquid is very good. And it's like I'm no military expert, but that seems like a very difficult thing to do. Use a helicopter to take down two F-16s. Very fast planes.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely, helps you realize what you're up against.
Um, but basically, what after you defeat him, um, you kind of find your way back outside again, and Snake is shot at, and he realizes this is Sniper Wolf, and Otacon begs you not to kill her, but you have to. And a lot, it's almost exactly like the first fight where you have to follow her around, um, and again, pretty straightforward. Uh, I don't know if I have a preference between the two boss fights from her being outside versus inside. Do you have any comments on the second fight with Sniper Wolf, again, it's also very good.
Yeah, it is largely similar to the first one, but I do kind of like, having to track her through the wood line, and it brings, a little bit of a different flavor to basically the same objective as the first fight. Um, but it is, to me, it is a little bit cooler to kind of have to track her through the wood line, uh, hide behind that little ridge whenever she shoots, be able to pop out in time to catch where she's going next.
Yep.
Um, you know, but yeah, I do prefer this second fight with her to the first one.
Yeah, it's a great boss fight. I mean, all of these boss fights are great in their own way. But eventually, you have to kill her. And you and Otacon, much like with Snake and Meryl, with wow, I can't believe I just shit the bed on his name, Psycho Mantis. Uh, Stand over her while she tells you her tragic backstory. Um, but it's like while she's dying, the wolves, you can hear the wolves in the background howling. And clearly, Otacon had a thing for her, a little Stockholm syndrome. But I think the feeling was somewhat mutual because the dogs, any guy that the dogs like, she probably also likes. But um, another great death scene for one of the villains. I think I sympathize for her a little bit more than Psycho Mantis, um, because it's not like she's taking over people's minds against their will.
Yeah, I will say this: the cutscene with Otacon has one of my favorite lines from the series, where Otacon asks Snake if he believes that love can bloom or blossom on the battlefield. I forget
Right.
exactly how he says it, but that is one of the most beautiful exchanges in the franchise, in my opinion. And it's kind of a sentiment that uh, kind of reverberates throughout other games as well. Um, but it's one that whenever I think of Metal Gear Solid, that's one of the lines that comes to mind first.
Yeah. It's a lot of really great dialogue. And I think I don't know. I think the something that I want to comment on with the voice acting briefly here, and we'll talk about it a little bit more later, is that it it never feels stilted or awkward or weird. Like the voice acting is all very natural. Like it feels like I mean, voice acting around this time for video games was very cheesy and weird and awkward. Like I mean, obviously the voice acting in this game could be cheesy, but it's kind of on purpose, if that makes sense. Like an '80s
Yeah.
and '70s Bond movie.
Well, there's a difference between the corny dialogue versus it being well acted. Because I mean, 1998, you got to think most games sound like you go into a room and a guard's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" That's the competition that they had. And I mean, the dialogue, the way it's acted in Metal Gear Solid, can go toe to toe with a lot of the big AAA releases that you're gonna get, last year, this year. You know, I mean, it's a real testament to how much passion I feel like there really was behind the scenes.
Yeah, the voice acting is one of the things that I mean a lot about this game holds up really well, but that's near the top. And yeah, it's really good stuff. But after she dies, you kind of go into this hangar, and you're ambushed in this. Basically, it's kind of like it reminded me of like the I know it's not a meat locker, but that's what it reminded me of because it was cold. um, and it's where you're ambushed by Raven. And I thought for sure this was going to be another mind control thing because Raven does something weird with his birds where the bird lands on you and makes Snake like freeze, and I'm like, is this going to be part of the boss fight where the bird lands on you and all of a sudden you can't move for a couple seconds? But nothing like that happened. Um, this is the most Pac-Man part of the game, in my opinion, because I think we definitely compared the previous two games to Pac-Man, but basically you're in this room with a bunch of um, giant metal crates, and you're basically both running away from him and chasing him around. And there's you could basically use any weapon against Raven. They're all useful. But for me, I'm curious to hear what you use. I use mostly the two rocket launchers, and I would leave C4 behind for him to like run over by accident.
Yeah, I left mines a little bit, um, but I use the Nikita missile the most, the one that you remote control.
Right.
Um, so I had a lot of fun with this fight, and actually, um, one thing I'm going to mention here, there was an like a schoolyard rumor that kind of permeated throughout the internet age that if you during the elevator ride down to the boss fight with Vulcan Raven, that if you shot all the ravens, that whenever you got to the bottom, Vulcan Raven would be there dead, like just his gun, like he is after the boss fight. Um, so I thought that was kind of funny that it's one of those like golden goose moments that kids would chase that didn't really even exist. Um,
An urban legend.
but yeah, yeah, urban legend. But no, I had a lot of fun with this fight. It's not my favorite of the game because it is kind of straightforward, kind of similar to his other one. But in this fight, at least, he'll drop crates in the path so that you have to change up your approach. Um, kind of reminds me of I don't know if you've played the Batman Arkham games, but
Yes.
in so the Mr. Freeze fight in Arkham City, where if you defeat him one way, he'll counteract that, and you got to find another way to get the next hit in. It's kind of got that aspect to it, which I appreciated a lot.
Right.
Um, but overall, it's not my favorite of the game, but it certainly is a standout, if for nothing else, how unique the character himself is.
Right. Yeah, it's like there's multiple ways to defeat that guy, and again, I appreciate the fact that really any of your weapons, with the exception of maybe your fists, could be used to damage him. But obviously, the rocket launchers and C4 are going to be your best bet. Um, I I bet there's probably some crazy person that has punched Vulcan Raven to death. Um,
Oh, I just immediately pictured, Snake sneaking up behind him and just wailing on him until he turned around with that massive gun.
right. um, but So after you defeat him, as he's like dying, Raven is basically like, "Well, I respect you now, so I'm going to tell you more about our evil plan." And he tells Snake that the Anderson, and you were hinting at this earlier, that he was conversing with was in fact Foxhound disguise artist Decoy Octopus. So the Anderson that died earlier in the game was in fact a mimic, I guess is what I would call him. He's basically the chameleon from the Spider-Man comics. Um, that was an interesting twist. Uh, did you have any more? Did you have any? Because you were the one that kind of hinted this earlier. I didn't know if you had more that you wanted to say about Decoy Octopus.
Uh, no, I know it's not like, you know, super in your. It's one of those things. It's a detail that is easy to forget as you go through the game. So I actually, for some reason, whenever I first played it, had completely forgotten that that detail was mentioned by him until the second time around. And then realizing that he was also mentioned in the manual, which, modern players, I don't even know if, half the people picking the game up today know that the manual is scanned and available there. So it's a nice little detail that is, less, I don't know, less in the forefront.
Right.
But it is kind of cool because, can you imagine a fight with Decoy Octopus, in a room with a bunch of other Genome soldiers slipping in disguise and out of disguise? That would have been just incredible. And I kind of hate that, he did get killed as soon as, you start the game, more or less. Um, but it's kind of interesting, seeing the other fights, knowing his power set, wondering kind of what would have could have been if he had been, in combat with Snake.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that. Like what it would have been like to fight him. Like would you have had to been similar to like Meryl, where you have to pay attention to how each guard is walking or something?
Yeah, it's one of those like what if scenarios. It's kind of fun to think about.
I guess if they ever remake Metal Gear Solid, that would be an interesting change. To have to fight Decoy Octopus.
Yeah,
I don't know how
I
well
don't
that
I
would
don't
go
know if they
over.
ever so I don't know if they ever would do that. That whoever made it would probably be crucified if they did. But it's a cool concept that would have been interesting to see explored for me.
Yeah, but basically, once Raven spills the beans on this, his birds uh, eat him. Like there's nothing left. There's no bones, no nothing. Just the machine gun. Um, and as Snake goes further into Metal Gear's hangar, he overhears Liquid and Ocelot preparing to launch Rex and use the PAL card. Um, but I really like this sequence because, again, it kind of reminded me of Resident Evil because there's a trick um, to the PAL card. Because something that one of the, I think it's Baker, says that there's three keys, but it's one key that acts as three keys. Basically, you have to have the key as room temperature, cold, and hot. So this is more backtracking. And not to get on remakes again, but if they, my comment on this is that if they did do a remake, it'd be kind of cool to see this be more of a puzzle rather than just backtracking, like having to
Yeah.
do a puzzle to make it colder and then doing another puzzle to make it hotter. Something that's a little bit more interactive. But it's a cool idea. Uh, and once he gets all quote unquote three cards, um, to Snake's surprise, this activates Rex. And Liquid is basically like, haha, you fell into my trap. And he reveals that he's been impersonating Snake's advisor, Master Miller. Um, and this is kind of shortly after. There's some characters that I haven't really mentioned that much because again, this is the, believe it or not, this is the book jacket version of this story. Uh, there's another character named Naomi. This is the woman that gave Snake the shot, and um, there's a lot of suspicion around her, and that she might be a spy, but it's actually Master Miller that's the spy because it's Liquid in disguise, and you find out that Master Miller was um, killed in his home, and this is basically where uh, Liquid tells Snake his evil plan, um, because if I remember right, it's they didn't really know how to unlock Rex or activate it, and that's kind of why they had Decoy Octopus um, pretend to be uh, Anderson, right?
Yeah, they're trying to figure out how to activate him more or less.
Right, and he
Um,
go ahead.
oh, I was gonna go on a slightly related tangent about Master Miller. Um, so that's a character so I we've talked about how this series is basically broken up into like present day and then past stories.
Uh huh.
So Kazuhira Miller is a character that gets fleshed out more later on in the series, and I don't know why. I played those entries before I played Metal Gear Solid. I don't know why, but I just imagine him as an old man in his lazy boy in his Alaskan home, just sitting there dead for days as Liquid impersonates him, and I don't know why, but that just makes it all the more tragic in my mind. Um, but I don't know why, but that's always just been the mental image that I get from that. But I remember that absolutely blew my mind because I called on Miller quite a lot whenever I played the game. Um, so I that reveal is the first of many revelations that we kind of get here in the third act, and I remember that one was one of the hardest hitting for me. It kind of like took me a second to be like, what the heck? This guy who's trying to been helping me throughout the game is actually the villain, and it kind of does call back to the first Metal Gear game where Big Boss will misdirect you and give you bad advice.
Right,
So
exactly.
if you notice, Miller will do the same thing throughout the story of Metal Gear Solid, but where it's more optional and more paced out through the runtime of the game, it's a little harder to notice than it is with Big Boss in the first Metal Gear game.
Yeah, I didn't call on him too much. I think we'll talk maybe more about this in gameplay, but I think Campbell, Merrill, and Otacon were the ones I called on the most, and of course, not Naomi, Mei Ling to
Yeah,
save the game. Um, but yeah, Liquid is Master Miller. He also reveals there's another reason that Snake was sent here. The injection that Naomi gave him, it's this disease or whatever called fox die. And this fox die is a virus that is programmed to kill specific people, which is why Otacon was not affected by it. Um, and it's the reason that Anderson and Baker went into cardiac arrest, and it's likely the reason that a lot of the other villains or members of Foxhound probably would have also gone into cardiac arrest had Snake not killed them. Um, so um, Snake was basically a Trojan horse, which I did not. That was another twist that I did not see coming. Um, and it's got. I don't remember when this is revealed, but we'll go ahead and talk about it now. It's basically revealed that Naomi also may or may not have programmed Foxeye to eventually kill Snake. Um, and
yeah.
it's
Man, whenever so are you gonna mention this later about the whole thing with Naomi?
yeah, I was getting ready to go into that. I think
Okay.
this is a good time to talk about it because I got about a paragraph left for the end game, and that's about it. Um,
Yeah, go ahead.
but it's revealed. So Snake talks to Naomi over codec at some point. Um, and I apologize, I don't remember exactly when. There's a lot that's going on in this game, um, in a good way. But she basically tells Snake that she wanted to kill him because he killed Gray Fox in the previous game, and Gray Fox um, was basically like a older brother slash father figure to her, um, because her parents were killed during some sort of conflict, and he took her in. And we learn a little bit more about this during the end of the game, but that's basically the gist of what she tells Snake. Right, is that she wanted to kill Snake because Snake killed her essentially brother father figure, but she's having second thoughts now because she's learned that Snake has this other side to him that is caring and is actually a decent person.
Yeah, which is really interesting because she, throughout the game is almost feels like she's flirting with you over the codec. So I expected, there to be some sort of, love interest blossoming there. That, Meryl, of course, ended up taking the role of. But for it to be a betrayal from somebody that seemed so close to Snake, it really like threw me for a loop. And the whole whenever everything's going down, at headquarters, and you're just hearing it all over codec and all the, uh, you hear Campbell making orders, and it really, uh, almost put me in a panic. The first time I played the game because there's a whole conflict going down that you're not there for, you can't even see it, but it's people that you spent so many hours learning about, getting close to, and it really feels like you are being betrayed by Naomi, but at the same time you don't want anything to happen to her. You almost, at least I did, I almost wanted Campbell not to take her under arrest. Almost had like harsh feelings towards him over the whole ordeal because I understood where she was coming from,
Right.
and I like I said, spent so many hours learning about her, talking to her over the codec, and I felt like even though she did do this, she made this mistake, she regrets it now. You know, give her the chance for redemption or something, and she's just boom, thrown in the a jail cell, and that's the last you really hear from her. It's just kind of a heartbreaking story that just transpires just with the two static images in the text box. It's crazy how Kojima can make you really fall in love with these characters and care about what's going on with them whenever you've never even share the same screen of like gameplay with them
Right.
or cutscene or anything.
Yeah. The only time that they're together on screen is during the, I guess, opening, not the opening credits, but the thing that's before the opening credits that looks like the comic book. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Even that you don't. The only person you get like a real clear look at is Snake. Like Campbell and Naomi are for the most part kind of slightly off camera. Um, but yeah, after this revelation, you eventually find Liquid, who is piloting Rex, and this is the, I mean, it's Metal Gear, so there's got to be a Metal Gear fight at the end, right? Um, and this fight was freaking tough. Because, and I mean, it makes sense. It's a giant mech, and you're just a dude, right? Um, Even though it's like we've done this before, um, this one felt it felt even more difficult until I figured out that like kind of staying around its legs was the trick to uh, outwitting it, I guess. Um, but basically, Otacon tells you to damage its basically its satellite dish or whatever, which will force Liquid to sort of open up the cockpit and reveal himself, so that way you could shoot him because you can't damage the Metal Gear itself, right? And Otacon lovingly calls this a character flaw, like because he feels like everybody should have a character flaw. So it's a lot like Jin Orso's father putting a flaw in the Death Star, right?
Yeah, that's exactly where my mind went to.
Um, so, but this battle gets really intense, and you're about to kind of lose, and Gray Fox appears and basically tanks part of the Metal Gear and saves Snake, and they have a very cliche in a good way where there's this talk going on while shit is hitting the fan, and he reveals that he was Deep Throat. So Gray Fox was the mysterious Deep Throat giving Snake actually good advice throughout the game. Um, and Gray Fox is the one that eventually helps to take down or get Snake to take down Rex, but unfortunately he's crushed to death. And there's a part in the game where you're like aiming your gun, and I'm like, is the game going to give me the option to shoot Gray Fox? Because I'm like, maybe it's better to put him out of his misery so he's not slowly being crushed to death. But I don't know if at some point it'll let you do it. But Snake just constantly said, no, I can't do it. I can't shoot my friend. So can you confirm whether or not that at any point you're allowed to shoot Gray Fox?
I never did. I don't know if that's a possibility or not. I'll be honest, I never really thought about that.
But I mean, you get
Um,
my like. I don't think that's a crazy take. Like he's being slowly crushed to
no,
death. Is it better for him
no,
to,
no, no.
you know? Um, but eventually he does get like absolutely destroyed, and during this time, he also kind of reveals that he was the one that killed Naomi's parents, which that was another one that was like, holy crap, that's that's something else. Um, and he basically couldn't bring himself to kill Naomi, so he took her in, and it's just like it's another thing where these characters have deeper levels to them and just terrible things that they have done. Um, and Did you have anything to comment on with the like? Because this is kind of the final boss fight in the game. Like, there's more to do after this, but this is essentially the final boss.
Yeah. So after a cursory Google search, it looks like you're not able to shoot him, and you're not the first person to bring that up either. I found a thread really quick where they're like, "Why would you not just put him out of his misery? It's 1,000 times more gruesome to just let him be slowly crushed to death." But it
Okay.
looks like that's just not an option. Um, but yeah, I don't know if it's just a jump from 2D to 3D, but I feel like this, the fight with the Metal Gear is just far and away just I mean, it's not even in the same class. It'd be unfair to compare the fights with the Metal Gears in Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 to the fight with Metal Gear Rex in this game because it's on a whole different playing field. And I actually had a lot of difficulty whenever I played it the first time because there's a sweet spot where if you get too close, you'll get stomped by the Metal Gear, and if you're too far away, he'll shoot you with his missiles or something. And there's a sweet spot there in the middle. And going back to the Mortal Kombat obsession I used to have, I'm terrible at keeping in the mid range. So
Yeah.
I did have a little bit of difficulty with that. Um, I try to keep him behind cover. Of course, he destroys everything that you try to hide behind. So you know, it took me two or three attempts the first time I went through the game, and finally ended up overcoming it, and it felt like it was a real triumph, um, not just for the player but also for Snake to overcome the Metal Gear,
Right. Um,
and the having the full story with the Gray Fox situation, from trying to follow him into outer heaven to rescue him in Metal Gear to him turning on you in Metal Gear 2, or I guess not, turning on you specifically, but, switching sides, working for the enemy, and having to take him down in Metal Gear 2 to you realize he's kind of alive in like this weird Winter Soldier way, and watching him sacrifice himself for you after everything that the two characters have been through is it tells a way different story than just jumping into Metal Gear Solid as your first Metal Gear game.
Right. I agree. Even there's another point during you just reminded me of Naomi and Snake's conversation where um, she's like, "Well, how could Gray Fox be your friend? You guys were enemies." And Snake says something to the effect that, "Well, we weren't enemies. We were just soldiers on opposite sides." Um, you
Yeah.
know, it was basically just a job. Um, but go ahead.
Uh, I was just gonna say there are a few moments too that the games kind of reflect each other. And I've called out a few times already, but like there's also the encounter in the elevator with the four people with the cloaking devices on that mirrors the fight with the four horsemen in I believe it's Metal Gear 2. I can't remember exactly. But then you've got like the tank fight mirroring the tank fights in the old games. The Hindy, um, you know, it it's like Kojima took George Lucas's idea for the prequel trilogy. How he said it's like poetry, it rhymes.
Right.
You know, he took that before George Lucas coined it.
Jar Jar is the key.
But that that's one thing that, I don't think I'd go out of my way to recommend playing Metal Gear or Metal Gear 2. And I think we've, mentioned it plenty of times already, but just seeing the correlations, like everything that I guess the foundations that they built in those two games that became, you know, this game is it's incredible to see the transformation, and you can tell that Kojima really cared about those games because he's cherry picking moments that were in the older games that he wanted to mirror in Metal Gear Solid and in future games as well. That really shows that he has a love for this world that he's created, these characters. Um, that you, I mean, it's hard to come by this kind of passion in games these days. I think, realistically, I'm trying to think back. Um, the most recent game that I've played that has, you know, passion and artistry on this level that I can think of is Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And
I was going
before
to say the
that,
exact same thing.
I yeah, before that, I'd be hard pressed to give an example of a recent game.
I mean,
Um,
Death Stranding, but that's Kojima again.
yeah, well, like I said, outside of Kojima, just not, it's like it's just something you don't see in AAA game development these days, where profit is the driving factor. It really feels like Kojima had a vision that he wanted to bring to life, and the creative process is the driving factor, and that's just something that um, I love about these games, and I think a lot of people that are nostalgic for the Metal Gear Solid series miss about it, whether they, know the words to put into it or not. It's just it's a whole different experience compared to the landscape of gaming today.
Right. Yeah, I agree to that for the most part. But uh, after Snake, going back to the story real quick because we're almost done. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, finish it up.
Snake destroys Rex, but there is a fight on top of Rex, mano a mano. Liquid basically tells, depending on whether or not you, uh, uh, well, let me go through this part first. So Liquid basically says there's a bomb strapped to Meryl, and you have like 2.5 minutes to beat him in a fist fight. Um, and if you beat him in time, the bomb won't explode and kill Meryl. Uh,
And
so
let me just say that that is the most James Bond setup to any encounter that I have have ever played through.
right, um, yeah, so it's like you basically have to dance around him and hit him at the right time, make sure he's not flashing and all that stuff, and all while making sure you don't fall off. But so going back to the once you after you defeat him and knock him off, um, you basically either escape with Beryl or Otacon. If you uh, gave in to the torture, like if you wussed out, Meryl will be already dead. Um, and I watched a couple of the scenes for that. And it was terrible, and it's why I was like Snake would never give in. He would, in my knowing what little I know about him after playing him in 3 games. I was like, I think he would die before letting somebody else, especially Meryl, uh, be killed by somebody else. So um, you basically you get to escape with Meryl, and you basically go down this tunnel where you're chased by a couple of soldiers, and you have to get through a couple different checkpoints. This I was like, this is I know this was a couple of years before Halo, but it reminded me of the end of Halo very much. Um, and during this chase, Liquid shows up yet again, um, and you have to shoot him in his jeep, and eventually you reach the end, and both your vehicles crash, and Liquid, who finds both Snake and Meryl pinned underneath their jeep, gets ready to pull the trigger, but guess what? He dies of a heart attack, courtesy of Fox Die. Um, and during this time, uh, Colonel Campbell was briefly taken out of command and was replaced with a senator whose name I can't remember at this time. And but Colonel Campbell basically takes command back and calls off a nuclear strike, which was set to basically destroy Shadow Moses Island. Um, and he reveals that Snake and Meryl are considered to be killed in action, which will stop the government from searching for them. And Snake, while still on the codec before the batteries die, asks Naomi, when is Fox Die going to take him out? And she basically dances around it, which I feel like, I understand that she doesn't want to tell him the exact time, but it would be good to be like, to know, is this going to happen tomorrow, years, days, weeks?
Yeah, like should I go buy groceries this week, or do I need
It's
to not worry about
it's
it,
like, do Meryl and I need to, you know, make love right this instant, so that way I don't die before that we can make that happen. But she's very elusive about this. And again, I think this is the only like major criticism I have of this game's story, really, in the game overall, probably, is this seemed like this was kind of dumb and not in a good way. Because like I was like, she, even if she didn't know like the exact day, she could have been like, well, it'll probably be months or years. Like you might have 4 to 8 months or whatever it is. Um, but whatever. So basically, they Snake and Meryl get on a jet ski. No, it's not a jet. It's a snowmobile, not a jet ski. I'm thinking the end of Resident Evil 4. Uh,
a jet
it's
ski for the land.
right. Yes, and Snake basically laments that he's gonna live for somebody else besides just fighting, and he hints that it's going to be living for Meryl, and uh, it's a sweet ending where they basically ride off into the sunset, and you get the credits with some dog sledding, um, but very important, do not skip the credits because there is an after credits dialogue where Ocelot is on the phone with somebody, and he is talking to somebody and basically talking about, yeah, my cover is still intact. My cover was not blown. We find out that he's basically a double agent, sort of, and he was sent on a mission by somebody named Solidus, who is a third clone slash son of Big Boss. So he's so they've I know we didn't really touch on this, but there were, I think, like eight clones of Big Boss, and apparently Solid Snake and Liquid Snake were the only ones to survive, and Liquid Snake thought he was the inferior one, and Solid Snake was the superior one, but it's actually flip flopped. And Ocelot mentions this, that it turns out that the inferior one won between the two. So there was like some reverse psychology going on there. And then, of course, while he's talking to this person, he calls him Mr. President. And that's like a huge twist that the other, you know, uh, that the other clone or brother, if you will, is the freaking president of the United States.
Yeah, that's one thing that like those after credits moments. There's one in each of the games, and it's kind of important to stay behind and listen to find out. You know, uh, not always a tease to the next game, but it more or less is like, okay, this is how these pieces fit together. Um, but yeah, the revelation that he's a double, triple agent working for the directly under the president of the United States. Um, that's just another foil in the incredible character that is Revolver Ocelot.
Yeah, it's an
And
amazing twist.
oh yeah, and before we get too far from it, I wanted to go back to the vehicle section where you're fighting Liquid in the tunnel as you're trying to escape Shadow Moses. Um, they're talking about, feeling the inspiration of Metal Gear Solid throughout, the years. Do you play any Lego games? Like the Traveler's Tales Lego games?
I just started playing Lego Batman 2, and I've played a little bit of some of the Star Wars ones, but that's about it.
Okay. So I've been playing them since the beginning. Like I love TT's work with the Lego games. I'm a huge fan of Lego and most of the IP that they use for the games. But in Lego Avengers, uh, the MCU based Marvel game, they had a section where, in the Avengers movie when Loki steals the Tesseract from Shield HQ,
Yeah, yeah.
there's actually a section where you're in a Jeep and Loki's in another Jeep and you're shooting, you know, between like basically the median, just like in this fight with Liquid Snake. So I think it's really funny which TT is no stranger to references to Metal Gear Solid in their games. There's actually a trophy in Lego Harry Potter where if you're playing as Professor Snape and you hide in a barrel, it's like Solid Snape, I think is the name of the trophy. Um, So like there's obviously some inspiration there, but I thought it was really cool that I didn't realize it when I was playing the game at the time, but that section is very clearly lifted straight from Metal Gear Solid.
That's hilarious. Um, yeah, I mean that's basically it for the story. And look, I know that Metal Gear Solid series has very passionate fans, but it's like I there's so much in the story I could not possibly uh, go over it. Otherwise, it probably would take another additional hour. There's a lot of like little things going on, and I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. I think I did an okay job going over like the main story beats to sort of just, but it's just like there's so many like little twists and turns and codec conversations that you can have. Um, this story is it's got a lot of layers to it, despite like the premise being pretty simple, right?
Oh yeah, that's what it's one of those games, and well, really each one of the games uh, feel like just a series of breadcrumbs that build on itself until it just becomes a clear path. And a lot of the times you don't realize what the breadcrumbs are leading to until you've already gotten there. Now you're looking back down the road and you're like, "Oh, okay, I get it now." Um, I mean, even like the smallest details. That like there's a very small detail towards the beginning of the game that gets brought back in as a major plot point in like Metal Gear Solid 4. I'm not going to spoil here for you, but it's that attention to the small details that they bring back and reward players for really paying attention that I think really draws in this particular fan base that Metal Gear Solid and Kojima have built over the years. And I feel like that's a lot of the reason why I don't feel like if Konami were to continue the Metal Gear Solid series in like a Metal Gear Solid 6, it would have the same staying power or get the same respect from fans of the series that another Kojima led game would.
Right. And I think that's definitely it'll be an interesting conversation to have once we finish the main games. But I could definitely see that point of view because it's like the story is. Um, I mean, obviously Kojima's not the only person that worked on the game. He's just he's the boss. Pardon my pun, but yeah, it I mean, it's just like the jump from like the storytelling in Metal Gear 2 is pretty good, but the jump from Metal Gear 2 to Metal Gear Solid is it's something else. But I mean, unless you got anything else to comment on the story, this is a video game. So are you ready to go into gameplay?
Yeah, yeah, let's go for it.
So I mean, we talked about the bosses and stuff, but how does so this game? This is a stealth game. Again, it is not too dissimilar from the first two games where you're trying to sneak around and avoid the ghosts. And I thought it was funny that the guard, and the reason I say ghosts is because a lot of times the guards are in white masks, so they literally look like ghosts. And I'm like, this has to be I know they're trying to blend in with the snow and stuff, but I'm like, this has to be. This feels like a deliberate like acknowledgement that yeah, Metal Gear's gameplay is basically a stealth version of Pac-Man. Um,
Yeah, I didn't even consider that, given the emphasis on Pac-Man, um, that kind of Kojima got this idea from. That would make a lot of sense. I never would have connected those dots on my own.
but basically, you control Snake, and it's not. it feels like tank controls to me. The closest I could compare it to is like the original Resident Evil trilogy, um, as far as like how he moves and stuff. How would you describe the gameplay when it comes to controlling Snake himself?
Well, the best part about this game, in my opinion, is that it is does have a fixed camera angle, um, or a contextual camera, I guess you'd call it, because it's not totally fixed. Um, but like whenever you move around, it's there's no camera to decide okay, I'm looking this way, I'm looking that way. So it's easy to figure out which way you need to go. But like whenever you hug up against a corner or something, the camera will come in and show you like down the hall from where Snake is standing, which is a touch that I really appreciate in a game like this. Um, it's similar to Metal Gear 2. You got the crouch, you got the crawl, which even like from the jump, whenever you first get into Metal Gear Solid, well, I don't know if everyone would, but I was immediately like crawling under those two pillars. That's where I waited out like the elevator at the very beginning of the game. Um, but even I don't know if you've uh, noticed this when you played, but like the technical achievements that they were able to do on a PS1 game in 1998 is incredible because you have um, when you're walking in the snow, your footprints linger
Right.
after you
Whose
have
footprints are
so
these?
yeah, and it is even so detailed that whenever there are little mice in the opening part when you come out of the water, even the mice leave behind footprints. Um, so it's like a level of detail that you would not expect, you know, before the year 2000.
Right. Yeah.
So, but just the fact that I feel like if they didn't have that little radar in the top right, it'd be a totally different game. Because I'm not joking when I say this, spend most of my time in this game just looking at the radar. I don't look at the screen or anything. I just look at the radar
Right. Because
because
that's where your field of
it's
vision is at, right?
yeah, it's where it shows what the soldiers can see and everything. And it's a basic outline of the area you're in, so you can get around just looking at the radar, which to me makes it even more crippling whenever you get an alert and the radar goes away. Um, but I also like the addition of like I may be getting ahead of what you were wanting to talk about right now. Um, but like the chaff grenades, chaff. I'm not sure which
Yeah.
one is the correct pronunciation. Like it can scramble the cameras and give you a bit of an edge whenever otherwise, like especially in the staircase going up the tower. That's when I used it the most, because I felt like
Same.
I was constantly running into something, and the chaff grenades gave me just a second to breathe while I was going up the stairs. But all the little additions came together to create a far more immersive, far more cohesive experience. Like as far as the stealth espionage aspect goes, in my opinion, the gunplay is not the most intuitive, at least not in this iteration. You know from playing Metal Gear Solid 2, whenever you get the first person aim option, that makes your life so much easier.
Right.
Um,
And
but
unlike,
in this one,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, just in this one where you just gotta hold down square and aim in the general direction, it makes it a lot harder to aim.
Right.
But if you're playing this the way Kojima wants, you're not really gonna be doing that a whole lot. So
Yeah, it's really only during boss fights, and the aiming is kind of difficult. It's like a auto lock on would be helpful, but at the same time, I think Kojima is trying to encourage you to use stealth, and even when you like call just pretty much anybody on the codec, they're basically telling you, you know, make sure you don't get into direct conflicts unless you really have to. So it's like a lot of times, like I went around enemies or I choked them out. It was extremely rare unless the game, again, there was a boss fight or I was forced to by the game itself that I used my gun.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost, as far as gunplay goes, I almost would have preferred an approach more like what Resident Evil used, because especially in that staircase that I was talking about, just remember getting like decimated by soldiers so many times, and I remember thinking it would be so nice if I could just hold my position and aim up just a little bit. It just will make it a lot a lot easier on me to not have to get all up in their grill before I'm able to actually land a hit.
Right. And I will say I think for the most part this game is really well balanced with the enemies and stuff. The only one that I thought was kind of unfair there, it's mostly during the last disc, um, where you're going up these stairs and uh, there are these guns that are mounted on the wall and that will just shoot the crap out of you, and you don't really see them until you turn the corner and then they shoot you. It's like that felt a little unfair because it's like you're not going to see them on your radar at that point. Um, but for the most part, the game never felt like it was unfair in its gameplay. It's like it's if you're getting shot at, it's because you let yourself get revealed or you were impatient or screwed up somehow.
Yeah, I remember that moment in particular causing a lot of frustration because it felt like if you didn't have a chaff grenade ready and just toss it in before you even go in the room, then you're going to cause a lot of problems for yourself.
Do you have a favorite weapon that you used?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely the Nikita missile. I think I talked about it a little bit earlier, but there's specifically a section with it very early on in the game where you've got the little electrical panel that is in your path, and you've got to use it to go through the um, little maze of hallways, um, and and there's like a control panel or something that you have to shoot with it, um, and that cemented it as just a really novel uh, system that I hadn't encountered before that I thought was a lot of fun to use.
Right. So I think for me it might be the Stinger missile launcher, because I really like the lock on feature. But all the weapons, it's like they had their place in the game. There wasn't a single weapon that I didn't use at some point. Even the sniper rifle I used outside of the boss fight with Sniper Wolf. Uh, but I think it's like they all had their purpose for sure.
Yeah, that's one thing that I feel like they did really well is you can definitely see that they have, almost like I know we've been referencing Resident Evil a lot, but like the keys in Resident Evil have a specific use and the it feels like almost a key to a progression gate. Um, so But on the flip side, you can use these in almost any other combat scenario. Just hope that you don't run out of ammunition when you really need it.
Right, exactly. And it's like the game seems like it's pretty generous with its ammunition, and I guess if you're really hard up, if you kill one of the guards, you might get lucky, and they'll spawn an ammunition or a ration. Um, and I will say, if you're struggling with the gameplay, because it does take some getting used to. Hence, I mean, I've started this game multiple times over the years, and this is the first time I've beaten it. Uh, the furthest I got in the past was Ocelot. Um, but what helped me this time around, and I guess if you're newer to the game, I don't know why you're listening to a breakdown unless you don't care about spoilers. But if you're new to the game, what I will say is do the VR missions first. Do like the first. I'm not talking about the VR missions from the expansion. I'm talking about that comes with the actual game. Do like the first 5 to 10 VR missions that kind of breaks down the gameplay in sections. And I'm not kidding. I think doing that really helped me be better at this game this time around.
I know it's kind of like supposed to be like a challenge room type deal, but it almost is like a tutorial for the systems, and like teaching you how to approach certain scenarios, and uh, which I think is really interesting that they included these, that almost like prepare you for what you're going into with Shadow Moses. Um, Even though in the context of the story of the game world, he's doing this as part of his training regiment.
Yeah,
So um but I do think it's a really good addition, and for anyone that's having trouble with it, it will help you tremendously if you can go through those quick. I mean, they're like what um at they'll take you like 5 seconds for the least one, and um like 30 seconds for the the harder ones. So it's something quick that you can do over and over that can really help you in the long run um, get better at the games and have a better grasp on the systems that are at play.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think the most important part of the gameplay, especially for this one, is the boss fights. Um, I feel like I know the answer to this already, but did what is your favorite boss fight, and did any of your opinions on the boss fights change during this most recent playthrough?
So I don't think it comes as any surprise that my favorite boss fight is Psycho Mantis. Um, just with how unique the fight is and all the tricks that he tries to pull on you, and the fact that it's brain versus brawn, which is always a conflict that I enjoy more than just who can outshoot the other person. um that's definitely my favorite overall. um I will say I liked the Vulcan Raven fight a little bit less than I remember liking it. Um, I don't know. I don't know why, but I feel like, you know, after, before going back and playing it this last time, um, after playing it for the first time, I remembered Vulcan Raven very fondly. And I think it's more to do with like the background of the character and how unique the character design and his personal presentation was. But when it comes down to actually playing the game, he fell down a couple pegs for me in this last playthrough, which was a little disappointing for me.
It's interesting that you say that because for me, it was a toss up for a while between Ocelot and the second fight with Vulcan Raven, where I went back and forth. And frankly, any of these boss fights I could see being somebody's favorite because I think they're all really good and really iconic. Um, it's like there wasn't one that I just like outright hated or got frustrated with. Like, because each time it's like I got a little bit closer to beating them. Like, they never felt really unfair. But I think at the end of the day, I kind of have to go with Ocelot just based off his personality. And then, I mean, I'm a huge sucker for westerns, so basically being in a gun draw fight with him was it was just cool. Like, I mean, and it also just like it sets the tone for the rest of the game. Um, I think.
Yeah. Now I will say, as far as who my favorite character is, by far it is Revolver Ocelot. Um, but unfortunately, that doesn't always translate into what their boss fight is. And really, all of them are very strong boss fights. Um, and the bosses, that's what the Metal Gear series is known for, even by people outside of the actual, fans of the series. You hear things about, the legacy of the boss fights that are in the games, but whenever it actually comes down to like, you know, picking the favorite of your children, it's a little hard to do.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But I think, did you have any other comments on gameplay before we move on to design and music?
Uh, Not really. I think I covered most of what I wanted to say there. Um, One thing that kind of surprised me, playing this for the first time, in the 2020s, is that a game from the 1990s does still feel as fluid and as intuitive in its gameplay. That it really, like, I feel like Metal Gear Solid is one of the most timeless games that you can find out there. And that's, putting it up against the likes of like Final Fantasy VI and, you know, honestly, the Super Nintendo generation as a whole is one of my favorite generations in gaming because that and the GBA have the pixel art, and by that point they'd pretty much gotten down 2D gameplay and it to a science, and you can pick up any of those games and you know how to play them. And even in today's time, and I feel like Metal Gear Solid achieved the same thing in a time where the technology was brand new. Nobody knew what they were doing with 3D games nearly as well as they did with 2D, and somehow they were still able to pull an all-timer out. And the fact that this is really still in the foundation of the franchise is just astonishing to me.
Yeah, and it's like I can't wait to. I mean, I'm already seeing it in Metal Gear Solid 2, like how they built on that foundation, and it's just better. Um, but I think what struck me most was that how much fun the game is, like just to play, and that was. I mean, obviously, I love the story, but if the gameplay was crap or frustrating, um, you know, I wouldn't be itching to come back to it. But just like again, like once I finished it, the reason I wanted to come back to it was because the gameplay was fun and the story was good. So I think that was what surprised me the most was just how much fun it was to play.
Yeah, I mean it still is kind of wild to me, and this is my third time playing it. It's still wild to me that even after my third playthrough, I'm like, if I were to sit down on a random weekend, just me in the house, nothing to do, I could see myself still going and booting up Metal Gear Solid just to start it for the fourth time.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so we ready to jump into design and music?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I think consistently, especially with the music, uh, even when we weren't keen on other aspects of the other two games, the music never let us down, especially with the first Metal Gear. But this one, um, I love how atmospheric the music in this game is. Um, and I also love their fan made like Shadow Moses ambiance on YouTube that you can listen to. Uh, the music is just incredible. Um, the and as far as design, graphics, I think it's one of the best looking PS1 games. Obviously, it doesn't have the pretty CGI um, cutscenes that Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 have. But these cutscenes are used with in-game graphics, and I think the only other PS1 game I would say that would have better in-game graphics would be Vagrant Story. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that game, but this one's definitely in the top three as far as graphics go, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like, stacking it up against other PS1 games. I mean, if you put Gex, Croc, and Metal Gear Solid side by side, I mean, I don't. There's very, very clearly, one of these things is not like the other.
Right.
Um, but I mean, even games that were trying to do the same things, like the original Silent Hill and the Resident Evil trilogy, there's just a bar that it feels like other games just weren't able to hit for one reason or another. It seems like Metal Gear Solid just completely knocked it out of the park as far as, what they were able to achieve technically, the consistently well designed, good looking models, be it for the characters, for the buildings, for Metal Gear itself. And even I think that I mentioned to you that there's in some of the more modern games, there's an unlockable um, PS1 skin that you can use, and even then, it you know is basically untouched from, or I'm sure it is touched, but it looks basically untouched from the original games, and still, while it does look weird with the modern graphics around it, still holds up as a well-made model. You can, even though his mouth's not moving and his eyes look like they are going up into his bandana a little bit, and you can tell, what Solid Snake is all about before he ever utters a word,
Right.
which I think it just speaks volume to the art team that was working on this game.
And I think I would say the same thing for each of the bosses too. Like they're not only are their is their gameplay iconic, but I would argue that maybe their looks and what they look like might be even more iconic than the boss fights themselves.
Yeah, I mean, even Vulcan Raven with that small little raven on top of his head.
Right.
I mean, it's just little touches like that that really bring out the personality of each of these characters, and it goes a long way in kind of, you know, setting them apart from just a regular goon. Um, and it's I don't know, it's hard to put into words. It's just how much it is on a different level from the contemporary games of the time. Today we may look at it and some people might scoff at how many, sharp edges and pixels there are. But I mean, really, it's when you look at the other games that were coming out in, 1997, 1998, it just it's in a class of its own.
What do you think of the music?
The music is fantastic, especially like I mentioned earlier, that opening track and then the track that plays over the uh, ending credits are some of the most uh, beautiful pieces of music. Um, Aside from like Clair Obscur, I would say that is like my favorite video game soundtrack. Um, Metal Gear Solid is I'd say probably top five
Wow.
with that in mind.
Yeah. I mean, it. What cracked me up is I think I didn't realize it until playing some of the VR missions for like the third or fourth time. I was like, wait a minute, this is the theme from Metal Gear One. The dun 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 dun. And it cracked me up. They brought it back for those. It's like, I guess unless I'm mistaken, and maybe they did, I didn't really recognize any themes from the previous games other than the alerts and um, I guess once the guards start chasing you, it sounds similar to Metal Gear 2, but this felt like a whole different ball game. Like, I mean, everything in this game is just a huge leap up from the previous two. Like, this feels like the game that Kojima wanted to make all along, um, and he finally just had the technology to just do it.
Yeah, I agree completely with everything you just said. It feels like, and I think I mentioned this in the Metal Gear 2 episode, but it feels like Kojima had a very specific vision, and he was just not going to give up on that vision until he had the means to make it the way he wanted to make it. And it feels like, be it um, Outer Heaven, be it Zanzibar Land or Shadow Moses, they're all kind of hitting on the same points, but I feel like this was the one where he was finally able to do what he wanted to with it, look at it at the end of the day and say, yeah, that is exactly what I wanted to get across.
And I guess that's a good segue into one of our final segments, which is overall thoughts in our rankings, which almost seems silly to do. I don't think our rankings are going to be too surprising until we start getting into the other games. Um, but I think for me, um, it it took me by surprise, and it was also like, God, why did I wait so long to play this from beginning to end? But at the same time, it's like it's kind of cool, like getting to go through all these games for the first time and getting to experience them back to back and doing them in this manner. Uh, you know, um, so it's I think that it lives up to its legacy, and it's I mean, so far Metal Gear Solid 2 is just building on the blocks that this started with, and I hope it continues.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead and give your ranking of the games?
Well, so I think Metal Gear 2 is going to be at the bottom, with Metal Gear 1 being number 2, and then you put a skyscraper between Metal Gear 1 and Metal Gear Solid. Um, I mean, there is a part of me that, and maybe if we get enough requests for it, we'll do it at some point, that wants to play the NES version, because I didn't realize that it was super different from um, the MSX version of Metal Gear 1. But um, yeah, it's like Metal Gear Solid is a game that I could see myself playing multiple times. Maybe adding it into my uh, rotation every year or so. Um, but yeah, it's great. So what about you?
Well, my ranking is the exact same as yours. I don't think that surprises anyone that's
Right.
listened this far into this. But now so I didn't play Metal Gear Solid until the Master Collection came out, and throughout all of my life, I had a friend who was, there were two video game series that he was obsessed about, and that was Assassin's Creed and Metal Gear Solid. And despite all the talk and all the hype, I never played Metal Gear Solid for some reason. Um, you know, even after I was able to get it on GOG on PC, but you know, even my ancient laptop, it was able to run it, but I never ended up getting very far. I think I got to the Revolver Ocelot fight and kind of dropped it after that. But when the Master Collection came out, I got it, uh, gave it a shot, and it was. I mean, honestly, if I had played it whenever I was a kid like he had, I probably would have been the same way. That would have been all I talked about. I mean, that probably would have defined my entire personality. You know, in a way, like I did play Metal Gear Solid 5 when it came out, but it just I feel like Metal Gear Solid does hit on such a different level, and especially for the time that it came out, that it's just you can see why it is such a formative piece of media for so many people that enjoy video games or work in video games now. It did so many things that games at the time just were not doing, and the things that games were doing, it did it better. Um, so, and even down to the espionage, like organization in the shadows type story that it was telling. It was gripping from beginning to end. Um, Now there is one thing that I am kind of interested in, and I kind of would like to do this for each of the games,
Okay.
but I'm curious to see where you think the story is going to go next. I know you've started a little bit of Metal Gear Solid 2, but you're not. I don't. I don't think you're deep enough into where like the full scope of the story's really revealed itself yet.
Correct. So
So,
yeah. So my, I remember what my because I think I said it when I was streaming it. What my guess where the story was going to go. My guess was that Metal Gear Solid 2 was going to start with Snake and Meryl in a cabin, and there was going to be a giant shootout that where Meryl gets killed, and it brings Snake once again out of retirement. Um, so far that guess has been wrong. um, uh, I did not. I've not. Metal Gear Solid 2 is again surprised me in a lot of ways. I did not expect the next game to begin the way that it did. And I'm kind of glad that, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything too much, but as far as like the beginning of Metal Gear Solid 2, in case people are uh, also playing the games for the first time with us. Um, but I'm glad that at least so far, it seems like Meryl is still alive because she's honestly one of my favorite characters from the game. Um, but that was my because it's just like it's like the Bond movies. There's always a new Bond girl in each movie, and clearly Metal Gear Solid takes inspiration from the Bond movies. So I figured it's like, is Kojima gonna have a new love interest in the second game? And of course, I had heard, and we'll talk more about this in the next review, that there were two playable characters in uh, Metal Gear Solid 2, so I was curious whether or not that was going to be like Resident Evil 2, where you pick between the two, or if it was going to be like RE9, where you kind of swap between the two characters throughout the chapters. Um, and it's closer to RE9's thing so far as like, this is like you don't pick between Snake and the other character at the beginning of the game, is what I'm saying.
yeah. Now I will say, I know a lot of people didn't like it at the time, but I think public perception's kind of shifting on that as time goes by. But of
Oh,
the
yeah.
games that I've played, Metal Gear Solid 2 is my absolute favorite. Um, Now, mind you, I've not played Peace Walker, Revengeance, or the movie. Um, so don't have a full picture, but of the ones I've played, two, I mean, knocks the other ones out of the park.
Yeah, it's like it's pretty often that the first three games could are typically people's favorites, and sometimes four and five get thrown in there. But it seems like it's more common that one, two, and three uh, are what people gravitate towards as far as being the quote unquote best ones. So, and again, I think that's when our rankings will start to get interesting is once we start getting to two and beyond.
Yeah.
At least I
And
hope.
I will say three, I think, is the people's choice for the best game. I know growing up, that's the one I always heard the most about. It's like that was the best one of the series and stuff. Um, but I don't know. I like to be different a little bit.
Fair enough.
But we'll get into it in the next episode.
Um,
But Metal Gear Solid 2 is one that I'm very, very excited to sit down and have a discussion about.
oh, and we will. But we do have one. We believe it or not, we have a question. Uh, and guys, if you're listening, join our Discord. Follow the show on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. But the two best places to post your questions if you want it read on the show is Discord and YouTube. Um, so we have one question that was posted on YouTube. It's actually from my uh, co-host Royd Stiffy, who I'm a co-host on his podcast Roy's Rants. His question is, if we were to direct a live action Metal Gear movie, who would you cast?
Um, so I saw this a few years ago whenever rumors were swirling around about a Metal Gear movie, and there was one name that kept coming up, and I agree wholeheartedly. It is Oscar Isaac with a bullet
Okay, Oscar Isaac. That's okay. I could as Snake.
as Solid Snake. Yes,
Okay,
that's um. Now, whenever you get outside of that, it's a little dicey. Um, but I feel like to get Metal Gear Solid right, you have to get Snake right, and to get Snake right, I feel like Oscar Isaac would be a perfect choice.
I could see that. My immediate pick would probably be Scott Eastwood. Um, it's like I think the reason him and Oscar Isaac would be good is because they're known actors, but they're not mega famous. I should have said Pedro Pascal just as a joke, but like they're not that level of famous. And I guess going through some of the other characters, Michael Bean would probably be one I'd pick for Roy Campbell as sort of a nod to the original Metal Gear cover. And he's old enough to
Yeah.
be Campbell. And
Well, he's got to die though if it's gonna be him,
did I say Sean Bean?
isn't it?
I meant Michael Bean, not
Oh,
Sean Bean.
oh no. You said Michael Bean. My mind went Sean Bean. I'm sorry. That's
I
me.
was like, did I actually say the
I
wrong
was
one?
no. I was my mind went straight to to Boromir, and I was like, well, that's weird. Too bad Campbell doesn't die. That'd be perfect for him.
No, no, I picked Michael Bean because he was well, one, he's old now and he has that sort of grizzled voice. Um,
Yeah,
but he was also the inspiration for Solid Snake in the original Metal Gear. Um, and
yeah.
then I think with Meryl, I probably pick. I know she's, and I didn't realize she was in her late 30s until days ago. But Ana de Armas would probably be good for Meryl because she just looks young, and I like her in action movies. Um, and I think the
She's
last,
in Ballerina, correct?
yeah, and she was also a Bond girl,
Yeah,
oddly
yeah.
enough. Um, and then the I think Austin Butler would be perfect for Liquid Snake.
Oh yeah, I give him a blonde wig. That would be a really good pick actually. Um, So I sent you, I don't know if you can pull it up or not, but I sent you in Discord a picture of like a mock-up of Oscar Isaac as Solid Snake.
Yeah,
Take a
yeah, I
look at
see
this
it.
and tell me it's not perfect.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, he's a really good actor. I really like him in Star Wars and Dune. So I could see him definitely pulling it off. But I mean, I think yeah, I think as far as casting go, I think those would be the main ones I would have to go with.
Yeah. Um, Now for Revolver Ocelot,
Oh, I
you'd have
guess
to get
that
someone like a Sam Elliott character, or just to pay homage to like the cowboy inspirations, at the very least. I don't know. Sam Elliott's probably too old to do anything like that now, but
part of
you'd have
me,
to get an actor kind of in that area.
yeah, part of me kind of wants Jason Statham to do it just to have him in a wig. But I could see him doing. Uh, I could see him because he could. Jason Statham is actually pretty funny in some of the other movies I've seen him in, where he's doing like action comedy. So I think he could pull off Revolver Ocelot's dialogue, which rides the being both ridiculous and badass.
Yeah. Yeah, I've not watched a whole lot of Jason Statham's movies, but like just watching from like the Meg, I guess would be the best one, the
Yes,
best point of reference I'd have for him. Yeah, I could totally see that. And just to see him in a wig would be hilarious. It'd be like Woody Harrelson as Carnage in the Venom movie. That it'd just be a sight to behold.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, that again, if you guys want um, to post questions, please join our Discord. There will be a link for that in um, the episode and as well as any of the show's social. So to close out, is there any other comments you want to make before we end this episode?
Um, I think we've talked, almost 2 hours. I think I've said everything I need to say. Um, if not, then I can just, tack on another 30-minute tangent onto the next episode.
Fair enough. Yeah. So uh, follow the show. We I've been posting the episodes on YouTube and Spotify, and I'm doing my playthroughs on Twitch and then posting them on YouTube. Um, but I think the best way to get into contact with us, join our Discord. It's like I want to try to build a community to talk about these games as we play through it. I think uh, you know, I think everybody's pretty shy on the Discord right now, but feel free to post uh, anything you want as long as it's following the rules.
Yeah, and we do have a question for the next episode already from
Yes.
Uncle Slam. So he posted that with the Metal Gear 2 episode for Metal Gear Solid 2. So we've already got that one, and it'd be awesome to get some more questions in there before our episode next month.
Yep, and I suspect these reviews will continue to be long like this one because we're almost at the 3 hour mark. Um, because I imagine these stories just get more and more crazy. I can only imagine how long the review for Metal Gear Solid 5 is going to be because that's like a 45-hour game. Um, so that'll be interesting for sure. But yeah, I don't think I've got anything else.
Uh, I'm good if you're good.
All right, well, take care, everybody. Look out for the next episode to drop next month.
See ya.